say thank you for your willingness to be a part of this subcommittee hearing. I have certainly appreciated getting to work with you, and I'm excited about what we can accomplish together. I, of course, want to thank all of the witnesses for being here. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to make sure that we address this important issue. And I am particularly excited to have an Alabama presence here, Roll Tide, and look forward to hearing from all of you. As we know, Americans are facing a squeeze when it comes to our country's affordable housing shortage. Estimates show a deficit of up to 4.7 million housing units that we need to actually meet the demands, and an even bigger gap when it comes to affordability of rental units. We know the average first-time home buyer is no longer in their 20s, but actually in their late 30s or even early 40s. The median home sale prices in the second quarter of 2025 was over $410,000. It's no wonder that around 75% of U.S. households are unable to afford the median-priced home. Now, while this is slightly down from the same time in 2024, which was $415,000, it is just not affordable for everyday Americans. Recent polling indicates that between 68 and 86% of renters in the U.S. actually want to buy a home, but cannot afford it. Showing homeownership remains a foundational element to the American dream, but as we can see, is out of reach for so many. This is not a partisan issue. This, in fact, affects families in Alabama and in Minnesota and in every state across our great nation. The core of this issue is not just affordability, it's also availability. In too many communities, including small towns, there are simply not enough homes being built to meet the needs of hard-working families. The rising demand paired with a limited supply has continued to escalate the cost. We also know that if there is no place to live, it is much harder to attract business and investment, to recruit talent, or to keep the next generation rooted in the communities that we love. This issue is multifaceted, and so therefore there is no easy solution. Overregulation certainly plays a part. 24% of the cost of a single-family home, a new one, and 40% of a multifamily development are directly contributed to by regulation. Now think about that. Anywhere between a quarter to 40% of a new home price is directly attributed to regulation. That's significant. Not to mention the building delays and that excessive regulation can cause. Now, much of this is at the state and at the local level. And so it's important for us to call out what's happening on the federal level, but also be honest about the role that the state and localities play, whether it's permitting rules, land use, or zoning requirements that can cause barriers to construction. But the federal government obviously has a role to play. We can help identify solutions by removing red tape and encouraging localities to update their rules. And we can successfully have individuals here, like you, testifying and bringing awareness to successful innovations, like the Fortified Roof Program. I'm certainly looking forward to hearing about that, Dr. Powell. Now, let me be clear, solving the housing shortage is not about more bureaucracy. It's not about spending more or more government subsidies. It's about unleashing locally driven solutions and cutting red tape while empowering builders and incentivizing private sector investment. This hearing, titled Innovation in the U.S. Housing, Solutions and Policies for America's Future. And that's what I want to focus on. Let's look forward and figure out how we help Americans meet the needs in front of them. We recently unanimously passed a housing bill in this committee, which is pretty remarkable. It passed, the Road to Housing Act passed 24-0. Today, we're going to hear how implementing many of the solutions included in the bill can help to expand production and development and make home ownership an option for more Americans. We can also hear about innovative solutions solutions like factory-built housing and the role manufactured and modular homes can play, particularly in reaching more of the population. In fact, I worked directly with the FHFA on their effort to update the financing programs to allow more flexible options for single sections cross-mod homes. This will allow more prospective home buyers to consider this type of home, which provides a more obtainable price point without compromising on quality. Additionally, as we are unleashing more production and building more homes, we want to ensure that the homes we build last and that we are properly preserving the housing stock that we currently have. On that note, today we will also hear about thoughtful approaches to building strong and leveraging public-private partnerships to be successful. At the end of the day, we must work together to eliminate barriers of home ownership. Owning a home is something that all Americans should have the opportunity to access and reach. I look forward to using what we learned today to help achieve that very goal. And now I'd like to recognize Ranking Member Smith for her opening statement.
Well, thank you so much, Chairman Britt, and congratulations on your leadership role in this subcommittee. I am really glad to be your partner, and I think that in this policy space, there is a lot of room for bipartisan work together. So I'm very grateful for this subcommittee hearing today. So without a safe, decent, affordable place to live, nothing in your life works. Not your job, not your education, your family, your health. It is nearly impossible without a home to maintain a job or go to school or stay healthy. And today we face a serious housing supply crisis. Depending on who you consult, you will hear that our nation is short somewhere between 2 million and 7 million homes. And of course, as a result, costs are soaring. Monthly mortgage rates are roughly 40% higher than they were in 1990, and that's after adjusting for inflation. And last year, as Chairman Britt said, the median home price topped $400,000 for the first time ever. The median age of a first-time home buyer is now 38. It used to be 29 in 1981 when Archie and I were first buying our first homes. And over 22 million American renters are paying more than 30% of their incomes in housing. That is too much money. That is not affordable. So we are short housing, especially homes that are affordable for working people. And this is true in every state and in most communities. This is kind of incredible to me. In 93% of counties in this country, a minimum wage worker can't afford to rent a one-bedroom place to live, even when they're working full-time. And this is very true in my home state of Minnesota. You know, I have spoken to employers who tell me that their HR departments have to be focused on finding housing for the talent that they're recruiting into their communities in order to get that talent to move to those communities. Families can't afford starter homes because there aren't any starter homes anymore. It is a significant challenge. And I also want to say this is a moment of optimism in some regards. We are seeing some really good examples of local and state innovation. So today, that's what we're going to be talking about. I'm interested in the discussion we're going to be having about innovative solutions for boosting supply, what we can do to spur construction of high-quality, resilient housing, and very interested in what's happening in Alabama, and also highlighting the big, important bipartisan work that this committee has done to move the ball forward on housing policy. You know, innovative approaches like Rise Modular, which is a company in Owatonna, Minnesota, they are building modular homes in their factory in Owatonna. It's saving time, it's saving money, and when you pair that construction strategy with the zoning reforms that have happened in Minneapolis, you were able to build housing at a different pace and at a more affordable cost, and it's making a really big difference. I'm really glad also, Chair Britt, that we are going to be able to highlight some of the important work that we did, led by Chair Scott and Ranking Member Warren on the Road to Housing Act, which, as you know, passed with unanimous support in the Banking Housing Committee. I know that this is a step in the right direction. We were able to pass it off of the Senate floor. We need to continue to work to move that and other housing reforms forward so that we can fulfill the hope in this country, the fundamental freedom that people want to be able to own their own home, to live in a place that they can afford, and all of the safety and security that that affords them. So thank you very much for this committee, and I look forward to our conversation.
Thank you, Ranking Member. Now we will turn to our witnesses. And Dr. Powell, I'd like to start with you. Our first witness today is Dr. Lars Powell. Dr. Powell joins us from Tuscaloosa, Alabama, where he is the Executive Director of the Center for Insurance Information and Research at the University of Alabama's Culverhouse College of Business. He comes with an extensive background in the intersection of housing and insurance, and recently spearheaded a widely distributed report on the successes of Alabama's Fortified Roof Program, which he will discuss with us today. Dr. Powell, you are now recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Ranking Member Smith and members of the committee. It's great to be here talking about a bipartisan issue where we can find great solutions. Where I'm from, we don't make a habit of talking quickly, so I'm going to try to get through all of this and just dive right in without a lot of preamble. But risk has grown in recent decades, and we've built a lot of flimsy, expensive houses in dangerous places. And when you mix that with increasing and more expensive storms, insurance is going to get more expensive, and it can become a substantial part of the cost of your home. We don't really have an insurance problem. Insurance is doing what it's supposed to do. When risk goes up and costs go up, premiums go up. But insurance is where you feel the pain as a consumer for these issues. What we really have is a how and where you build your house problem, and that's and most importantly, it's good to have houses in some of these risky places. Someone has to work at the port, and it's good to develop some of the wildlife urban interface areas for people to live. So we focus on how we build houses. Our recent study on Hurricane Sally showed that the technology that we've adopted in Alabama, the IBHS fortified system, works, and it works very well. In this strong, slow-moving Category 2 hurricane that did a lot of damage relative to other Category 2 hurricanes, we found a decrease in loss frequency of 75% compared to conventional houses, and a reduction, once there is a claim, of 20 to 40% in the severity of these losses. Now, frequency reduction is important because not only does it save money for an insurance company, but the policyholder doesn't have to pay the deductible, which at the coast can be most commonly 5% of the cost of rebuilding the house, but also often it's 10%. Think about that, paying 10% of the cost to build your house out of your pocket. That's a heavy lift for most anyone, and you avoid that when there's not a loss. So fortified is not only effective, but it's affordable. Volume builders in Alabama love it. They say they can build a fortified gold house, brand new construction, for less than 1% more than just meeting the International Residential Code. And even for a more bespoke house or a retrofit, we're talking about somewhere between 3 and 7% increase in cost. And for all of these reasons, we believe that fortified represents a solution, not a mitigation or an assist, but a solution to insurance affordability for the perils that we face in Alabama. And I'm confident that the same people working on the same problems, but for different perils in other states, will find the same level of success. So the study has a lot of stuff that you can read about. I'm already behind time, but in the last, some of the things we've done in Alabama, in 10 years, we've either retrofit or built to a fortified standard more than 20% of the houses at the coast. If we had started this in 1980 instead of in 2010 or 2015, we wouldn't be having this discussion about expensive insurance. When a hurricane came through, we'd go inside or we'd evacuate. We'd run generators for a few days, and we go back to doing whatever we were doing because there wouldn't be this huge expense or this big catastrophe. So the housing stock turns over slowly, and every house that's built to an inferior standard is a tragedy because it'll be 40 years before you think about putting a new roof on there unless you have a storm, and storms are what cause the expense for insurance. So our engineers, meteorologists, other scientists have come up with great technical solutions. The heavy lift that's left to do is for policymakers, local, state, federal. There's also a lot of work for insurance companies and builders, But that's where we're at now. We know the technology, we know that it works, we know it's affordable, but we need to create effective incentives for loss mitigation, and that can be tricky. We've learned a few things that work in Alabama, and I'll give you 3 of them as quickly as I can. We have a Strengthen Alabama Homes grant program that helps people afford to put a new roof on their home that is more resilient. We will have done about $100 million at the end of this year, fortifying more than 10,000 houses in Alabama. And importantly, our data show that once a contractor bids on a Strengthen Alabama Homes grant, they turn around and sell the same fortified roof outside of the grant program. So it creates this supply of contractors that otherwise you're lacking. That's a big part of putting a mitigation program in place. We also have the fortified endorsement that insurers are required to offer on policies, and this ensures that communities rebuild to a higher standard even after a disaster. When they're saying, oh gosh, hair's on fire, we've got to rebuild all these houses as fast as we can. No, you need to rebuild all these houses as well as you can. That's part of why we got to 22% in Mobile and Baldwin counties, is because we had Hurricane Sally knock the roof off a bunch of conventional houses, and then the insurance endorsement paid to rebuild them to a fortified standard. We have insurance discounts that in some cases insurers offer larger discounts than are required in Alabama, and they offer the same discounts in Mississippi and Louisiana. So that's really important. It gives the consumer a strong incentive to build fortified. And so our strategies have been effective. We see huge returns to these incentives. One thing that we're watching here in Washington, I'm sure there are several, but the disaster savings accounts, which you have as the READY Act, we're working on a study to measure the costs and benefits. I look forward to sharing that with you as soon as we're finished. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Dr. Powell. And now I'll turn to Ranking Member Smith to introduce our next distinguished witness.
Thank you so much. I'm really glad to have the opportunity to introduce Mary Tingerthal to this committee. Mary and I have worked closely together for a long time, starting when I was Chief of Staff to Governor Mark Dayton of Minnesota and then Lieutenant Governor. So it's a personal pleasure to welcome you to the committee. Mary has been a strong and solution-focused leader on housing policy and housing finance her entire career. Most recently, she founded Construction Revolution, a collaborative innovation hub that is focusing on new strategies to reduce the cost of housing through off-site construction. And previously, as I said, Mary served as commissioner of the Minnesota Housing Finance Agency. She has held leadership positions in the private sector, at the National Equity Fund, the Housing Partnership Network, and the Community Reinvestment Fund. She has spent her professional life working to provide families with better access to homes that she can afford. Mary earned her MBA from Stanford University, my alma mater, and her bachelor's degree from the University of Minnesota. So welcome to the committee, Mary.
About innovation in housing.
And can you push your mic on? Thank you so much.
Sorry. As Senator Smith mentioned, I'm the founder of Construction Revolution, and we have tried to reduce the cost of housing by focusing on learning more about off-site construction and making it happen in Minnesota. I'm here today to talk about why it's important to encourage housing developers to embrace modular construction as one way to help the important national goal of increasing housing supply. As you've reflected in the diversity of items in the Home Road to Housing Act, it will take innovation in all parts of residential development and financing process to produce more housing that's more affordable for more people in more places around the country. So why should off-site construction figure prominently on that list of innovations? Over the past 5 years, entrepreneurs have stepped up across the country to invest in factories to produce modules to build housing, with much of that new capacity focused on multifamily housing. In that time, we've learned that modular construction can deliver 3 key benefits: shorter construction times, lower construction costs, and more effective use of skilled labor. Estimates of time savings range from 20 to 50%. And that's possible because 60 to 70% of the construction work can be performed off-site in a factory at the same time that work begins on site excavation, foundation, and utility work on the project site. This means that larger multifamily buildings can be completed, start generating revenue, and stop paying construction loan interest in 12 months instead of 24. That's a big deal. Estimates of time saving, estimates of hard construction costs have been shown to be 10 to 20% lower on the portion of the construction that's completed in the factory because of more efficient work processes, less construction waste, and more effective use of skilled labor. Standardized design and processes mean that skilled tradespeople can oversee the work of lower skilled workers who can be effectively trained to do repeatable tasks under the supervision of master carpenters and such. Quality control and consistency of construction are also improved in a factory setting. In 2024, it's estimated that about 7% of multifamily buildings in the US used either modular or panelized construction types, up from just 2% in 2022. And approximately 9% of single-family homes were manufactured homes under the HUD code, with an additional 3 to 4% using modular construction. Two provisions of the Road to Housing Act would help to overcome barriers to faster and broader adoption of modular construction by housing developers. First, developers are reluctant to undertake a modular project if they're unable to use the most effective financing tools available. For example, the FHA Construction to Permanent Loan product has administrative measures that don't allow construction draws for materials and work that's completed off-site in the factory. You can only start making those draws once the materials are on the construction site. Section 302B of the Modular Housing Production Act section of ROAD instructs HUD to look at these administrative measures and identify how they can be modified to support modular construction. Second, because most building codes in the US are written for traditional construction, the permitting and inspection processes for modular buildings can be complicated, confusing, and time-consuming. This is especially true for modules constructed in one state and installed in another. Section 303C of the Act authorizes HUD to do a study on the design and feasibility of a uniform commercial code for modular housing. Finally, one of the most common barriers to modular adoption is that many stakeholders simply are unaware of how modular construction works. Real projects can help to increase that awareness. One such project completed in Minneapolis was highlighted in the 2024 HUD Innovative Housing Showcase with modules produced by Rise Modular in Minnesota. The fourplex and sixplex buildings produced by this project now serve as home to 84 low-income families on 16 different sites in 11 different neighborhoods in Minneapolis, and now serves as an example of the innovative and effective use of modular construction, literally for developers and communities across the country. Thank you for your leadership in advancing the Road to Housing Act and the opportunity to talk with you about the critical importance of modular construction in achieving increased housing production. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And last, we'll turn to our third witness, Mr. Dennis Shea, who is the Executive Vice President and Chair of the Center of Housing Policy at the Bipartisan Policy Center. Mr. Shea brings a deep expertise in the housing market and related policies. He has an extensive background in both public and private sector, and in his current role has worked directly to advance public policy and more effectively address our nation's critical housing affordability challenges. Mr. Shea, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Chairman Britt, Ranking Member Smith, and members of the subcommittee, thank you for this opportunity to testify today. Ron Terwilliger, the founder of BPC's Terwilliger Center for Housing Policy, used to say that the nation's housing affordability challenge was a silent crisis, largely ignored by the media and policymakers. But the problem has become so severe it can no longer be considered silent. Not unexpectedly, a bipartisan majority of Americans think housing affordability is a significant concern and support legislative reforms to address the crisis. Today, a record 42.9 million households, half of all renter households and a quarter of homeowners, are cost burdened, meaning they pay more than 30% of their income on housing alone, leaving little to cover other essentials like food, childcare, and transportation. In the last 5 years, home prices have skyrocketed by more than 50%, and rents have jumped nearly 30%. Mortgage rates, property insurance costs, and property taxes have all increased as well. With income growth lagging behind rising costs, homeownership is slipping further out of reach for millions of families. As this committee has recognized, housing is a nonpartisan issue that commands strong bipartisan support. The unaffordability of housing affects Americans in virtually every state and community. It is not a red or blue concern. I commend the committee for acknowledging the growing severity of the problem and for your commitment to working together on solutions. The Renewing Opportunity in the American Dream, or Road to Housing Act, which received a unanimous bipartisan vote from the Senate Banking Committee and recently passed the full Senate, marks a major congressional milestone. The bill updates and reforms federal housing policy through three primary channels: deregulation, modernization and improvement of existing programs, and support for state and local governments in addressing the housing supply shortage. In the area of regulatory reform, the Road to Housing Act would eliminate the permanent chassis requirement for manufactured homes. This simple but important change is expected to reduce the cost of new manufactured homes, already an affordable option, by $5,000 to $10,000 per unit and encourage greater innovation in manufactured housing design. The legislation also includes provisions to streamline the environmental review process, aiming to reduce the delays and added costs that this process can impose on housing development. Importantly, Road to Housing would modernize programs within the USDA's Rural Housing Service with provisions to preserve as many as 300 affordable rental homes in rural communities while revitalizing aging homes and strengthening USDA's capacity through IT modernization. To help communities reduce barriers to development, Road to Housing directs HUD to publish guidelines and best practice frameworks for state and local zoning and land use policies. Another section of the bill establishes a grant program to support localities' development of pattern books or sets of pre-approved or pre-reviewed housing designs for missing middle and infill housing that would help streamline construction approvals and reduce project timelines and costs. While federal support is essential, state and local leaders play a central role in crafting solutions tailored to the unique challenges of their communities. Since 2018, at least 20 states have taken steps to make it easier to build housing. Local communities, of course, are also responding, with many implementing reforms that allow the construction of new types of housing and lower the costs of new housing development. Ultimately, a long-term, all-hands-on-deck approach is needed to increase housing supply and improve affordability, including efforts from all levels of government, the private sector, and philanthropy. The private sector in particular plays an important role in developing and testing new innovative approaches and ideas. For example, private companies are pioneering more cost-effective and resilient construction materials, the use of off-site building and artificial intelligence to shorten construction timelines, and deployment of streamlined rental application processes. Without the private sector's leadership on innovation, we will not have the necessary tools to address the housing challenges we're facing. So I commend the committee and your dedicated staff for your work on Road to Housing. If enacted, it would be the most consequential federal housing legislation in more than a decade, making important advancements in its own right while providing strong momentum for further action by other housing stakeholders. So thank you for your time and attention, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you. Go ahead and get started, and I have questions for all of you, so I'll do my best to get through them quickly. Dr. Powell, I appreciate you being here. Obviously, the Fortified Roof Program is something that I am incredibly proud of, and your work alongside the Alabama Insurance Department, I believe, has been a game changer, not for so many families in Alabama, but in addition to that, for people from coast to coast. I believe this type of initiative is the type of thing we should be thinking about when we're looking at the housing market and we're taking a comprehensive view of what needs to be done long term. I have several family members in the audience today, and one of them actually lives in a coastal community. And obviously what happens when storms come and what happens in the aftermath is tremendous. And so I know sometimes people think that this may cost a little bit more upfront, but I think you mentioned, and I think your studies show the economic benefit of that is tremendous on the back end. Can you speak briefly to that and kind of what your research showed?
Sure. And we've done a number of studies around fortified. One of them shows that on average, a fortified house sells for 7% more than a conventional house. And that's because you save so much money on the insurance. It's still a good deal. I'm told by real estate agents that focus on the coast, like right on the beach, that premium goes up. And again, you make it back in the savings on insurance premiums because you can't get a mortgage on a house without buying insurance. So yes, it can cost a little bit more, not much more. As I said, for our volume builders that are corporately owned private firms, they build fortified because they make more money, and people buy fortified because they still save more money. It's the hard part about it, and the reason why there's a need for any sort of government intervention is because you can look at a fortified home and a regular home side by side and you can't see the difference. It's not like some really nice granite countertops or floor finishes or whatever else you might choose a house based on. So it's good to have some incentives to get people to build this way. But what's the weird part to me is that we haven't built this way for the last 20 or 40 years. Part of that is we haven't had the technology to address it. But this is 100. I mean, my training's as an economist and an actuary. You look at the numbers any way you want to look at the numbers, they're great. Habitat for Humanity builds fortified because it makes the home more affordable for the people that live there, especially at the coast. Makes the insurance affordable.
And I was taken by your comment that if we had done this in the 1980s, we wouldn't be where we were with the insurance market in 2010, 2015. So I certainly appreciate that and think we need to kind of drill down on that even more. Mr. Shea, obviously we have some deregulatory measures in the Road to Housing Act, but I wonder what else we may be able to target. So if you don't mind briefly speaking to that, I mean, for example, if we are building a home on a site in which a home has already existed, do we still need to jump through those same regulatory hoops if that piece of property has been built on before? Things like that. Can you speak to that and address how other areas of unnecessary regulation, encouraging maybe some communities to update their rules, may be beneficial to us as we tackle this issue?
Well, I think the Road to Housing Act uses a few levers to encourage state and local communities to reform their local zoning laws. First, you do best practices and information sharing. The Housing Supply Frameworks Act provides that. Then you do the carrot approach in the bill. The Innovation Fund is a competitive program that encourages communities to actually produce more housing. You have to produce more housing, and provides examples of how to do that by as-of-right development, streamlined permitting, allowing accessory dwelling units and manufactured housing. So that's a carrot approach, along with the building more housing near transit, which encourages communities to if you apply, it allows the Department of Transportation to give bonus points in grant applications for transit projects if the jurisdictions allow for more housing. So I think it's interesting you have this best practices, you have carrots, and then you have a stick in there, which links access to community development block grant funding in high-cost areas to housing production, and with the potential for losing a percentage of CDBG funding if these high-cost areas don't produce essential housing. So I know I'm maybe not answering your question directly, but I think it's important to underscore in Road to Housing the various levers that you have highlighted and present to encourage more housing density and more pro-housing policies at the local and state level.
Thank you. Ranking Member Smith.
Thank you, and I will defer to my colleague, Senator Cortez Masto.
Thank you. I want to thank Chair and the Ranking Member for this hearing. And I think the entire committee working with the private sector on addressing and finally at least passing out of the committee the bipartisan Road to Housing bill. We can already tell how important this is for our communities. I thank you for being here. I thank you for your work over the years on this issue. Dr. Powell, I want to get back to what you talked about a little bit about fortifying roofs, and I appreciate your research showing the huge financial returns for resilient incentives. But not every state can offer retrofit grants to every homeowner who could benefit. For that reason, Senator Cassidy and I have a bipartisan bill called the Affordable Housing Bond Enhancement Act, and it would allow lower-cost mortgage revenue bonds for home repairs, amongst many other things. My question to you is that right now the current cap for home repairs is $15,000. This bipartisan bill would raise it to $75,000. So, Dr. Powell, can you speak to how access to lower-cost financing could help more people repair their homes?
Sure, and that's a great question. I appreciate it. Several of the projects that we, and by we I mean Commissioner Fowler, the Alabama Insurance Department, Strengthen Alabama Homes, I will put a colloquial "we" on there, but a lot of good work goes on. And we've done several projects in inner cities around Birmingham and Tuscaloosa. And the hard part is with a $10,000 grant, you can't put a $10,000 roof on a home that has deferred maintenance issues. I mean, it doesn't have the strong connections that it needs to have. So we always have to partner with Habitat for Humanity and usually another granting source. In Birmingham, it was Protective Life, came through pretty big and really took care of the deferred maintenance so that we could retrofit these houses. The program you're talking about, I don't have any direct data on it. It's not my expertise, but I can tell you that being able to address deferred maintenance, especially in lower income, older homes, larger homes that have a lower cost, it's really hard to find the money to do that deferred maintenance so that you can retrofit. Not that it's super expensive, just that it's not included in the state grants that we do and that several other states are working on. So yes, this any additional source of funding would let these programs retrofit a lot more houses so that people have resilient roofs.
And so just to be clear, before, even if you get a grant for that resilient roof, you would not be able to use it until you did the deferred maintenance on your house. And if you don't have the funds to do the deferred maintenance, you're not putting the resilient roof up, correct?
Yes.
And that's why the impetus for this part of this legislation is to increase the opportunity for homeowners to have those maintenance repair funds to do just that. I like the idea, and we've been talking about this because we're all seeing higher insurance premiums. We see them all across the country, Alabama, coastal. Let me tell you, in the West, it's wildfires. And that's having an impact on so many of our structures. Is there a way for the coastal fortified homes and how you fortified them because of for coastal resilience? Does that translate any? Have you seen anywhere for wildfires in the West, or is there the ability to translate that there?
Well, the same people are working on that problem as worked on the wind problem. The folks at the Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety, the IBHS, have a Fortified Firewise program. They're putting the same effort, and they've come up with the science. They can do an indoor wildfire in their amazing laboratory in South Carolina. If you haven't seen it, there's some videos that are really amazing. But yes, the same that they've found that they've identified the same primary issues of you can't have stuff that burns right next to your house. That's a really big deal. It's kind of hard to monitor because it can change very quickly. But I'm confident that the science is going to be there. If it's not already, it's going to be there a long time before the money is to build all of these houses. So it's important to work on both of them at the same time. And yes, I have no doubt that we'll figure out wildfire the same way that it looks like we figured out high wind and hail and hurricanes.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. So I would ask my colleagues to join Senator Cassidy and I on this bill, the Affordable Housing Bond Enhancement Act. Mr. Shea, thank you. The senator's already supported it publicly. I so appreciate that. And then finally, I don't have a question here, but Ms. Tingerthal, Thank you, thank you, thank you for highlighting manufactured homes. I cannot tell you how long I have been talking about the benefits to manufactured housing in this day and age, the fact that the structures can be resilient, they're cost effective, and you've just highlighted how important they are. Most importantly for me, in my rural communities, it is so hard to get contractors out there just to build homes, but we can bring manufactured homes into rural communities that are affordable, that will put a roof over somebody's head, and they are strong structures that are safe. So I want to say thank you for continuing to put a fine point on manufactured housing and what we can do to continue to support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator McCormick.
Chairwoman and Ranking Member, thanks for holding what's a great hearing, and thanks to our expert witnesses for some very insightful things that you've said. The One Big Beautiful Bill Act delivered relief for millions of families and small businesses. It also supported the development of affordable housing for investments in underserved communities. For example, the low-income housing tax credit will allow states to build more rental housing projects and improve the ability to finance homes. This is a big deal in Pennsylvania. We ranked 44th out of 50 for the rate of new housing build from 2017 to 2023, and housing affordability is a big concern. Mr. Shea, one of the things in the One Big Beautiful Bill makes the opportunity zones permanent. I wonder if you might take a minute and describe how investments through qualified opportunity funds can encourage the development of affordable housing.
Yeah, thank you, Senator. We were very strong supporters at the BPC for expanding the low-income housing tax credit. Just want to say that. And the combination of the low-income housing tax credit with the passage of Road to Housing unanimously by the Senate is giving us some hope that the folks are finally waking up. But opportunity zones are very helpful for residential housing production. I believe studies have shown that investments in the OZs prior to the One Big Beautiful Bill Act led to more than 300,000 residential units. So opportunity zones are pro-housing, and by making them permanent, the OZ permanent, and expanding the designations and getting more into the rural areas, I think will help housing.
Great, thank you. And Ms. Tingerthal, we all, I think, are very excited about the possibilities of the Road to Housing Act and its focus on reducing barriers to increase the supply of housing. In your testimony, you outlined the regulatory barriers to modular construction. Could you underscore a few ways that government regulation alone can pass along the cost to the consumers, and how the Road to Housing Act looks to mitigate some of those regulatory barriers?
Thank you, Senator, for that question. I think one of the best examples of why regulatory reform is so important for modular construction is the absolute success that we have of the so-called HUD code that was adopted in 1976 that has allowed us for all these years to build manufactured housing to a single national code. That alone is one of the things that allows manufactured housing to stay so affordable compared to stick-built housing. Modular construction, which has many similarities to manufactured housing, but does not use a chassis, doesn't enjoy that same national code. And so one of the provisions in the Road to Housing Act would require the HUD secretary to complete a study that would determine whether a uniform commercial code for modular construction for multifamily particularly could be implemented. One thing that's not well known is that over the last several years, starting back in 2019, there has been a team working between HUD and the National Institute for Building Sciences, NIBS, and a professional group of national and international experts on offsite construction called ModX have been working, developing recommendations developed by the industry for what it would take to develop such a commercial code. So this provision has a lot of groundwork that's already been done, and the stimulus to actually make it happen would really be significant.
Very good. Thank you. Yield the rest of my time.
Ranking Member Smith.
And I defer to Senator Gallego.
Thank you, Chairwoman and Ranking Member. Mr. Powell, 3 weeks ago, I was in the cities of Globe and Miami, Arizona, walking through neighborhoods devastated by historic floods that tragically claimed 3 lives. And then the floods came again 2 weeks later. I met families who had paid off their mortgages just to watch everything they worked for wash away. But what hit me the hardest was the grit and how the community rallied. They're going to rebuild. They've lived there for generations. And of course, I'm going to be there fighting with them. The fight starts by restoring funding for disaster mitigation, the very funding this administration has cruelly slashed. Are you familiar with the Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities Program, or BRIC as we call it?
Yes.
So BRIC was created in 2018 under President Trump. It's actually was a very good program. It's a smart program designed to prevent disasters before they happen, to save lives, protect homes, and save us as taxpayers money. In April, they killed it, which is the same law the president signed in. What has the tangible impact of BRIC funding on housing resilience before it was cut? What did you see was making a difference when it came to some of these communities?
So what we were really excited about for BRIC, or for any, you can call it what you want, but being able to use Stafford Act funds before a loss instead of after makes all the sense in the world.
Right.
You get this return on investment. You save a lot of money for every dollar you spend on pre-loss mitigation, and the smarter you do it, the more you save. So yes, having funds like that, it makes good economic sense. It makes good sense for the budget and everything else to put these resources towards pre-loss mitigation, at least in some. I believe there was some percentage that was set aside for pre-loss mitigation, and we were excited about ways to use that. We had a grant proposal in to help shore up our building code as part of that. So yeah, we love to see. I don't care where it comes from. We need resources to do this.
Yep. And thank you for that. And so when this program went in 2018, the message and the word got out about it. Did it get circulated fast enough for people to take advantage of it, or just good?
Well, from where I sit, we saw it immediately, and we wanted to find out how to get our hands on some of that money. In terms of how quickly we can do that, I think there's a lot of things about the Stafford Act and different rules around FEMA that can really get in the way of achieving the mission. Okay. So I think it might be a great time to look at all of the details around that. At one point, we had a big grant from FEMA in Alabama to help pay to retrofit homes, and we had to give it back because the hoops to jump through were too onerous. We were not able to do one single retrofit with that money. We wound up raising the money from insurance fees and taxes in the state, and that's worked very well. But yeah, it's got to be something that we can work with.
Well, certainly, definitely reach out to my office. I'd love to look at that, because on my other hat, I'm on the committee that also oversees FEMA, and it makes zero sense for us to fund these things, but can't do it because of regulations that we impose on ourselves and our local ones. Switching to insurance, I hear from Arizonans all the time that home insurance bills are out of control. We are, yes, we're a desert community, but we also have a lot of forests. We have the largest ponderosa forest in the world. Over the past 5 years, Arizona experienced the highest increase in home insurance rates nationwide, and now we're staring down another 8% increase before the year's over. One of the clearest and most practical solutions is also one of the simplest. Building stronger, more resilient homes reduces the damage during disasters. It means fewer insurance claims and lower premium costs. We had that conversation a little earlier. Mr. Powell, in Alabama, we've got a system that actually rewards homeowners for making those 4 to 5 improvements. Insurance are required to give them a discount. Can you walk us through how that works and what kind of results you've seen? I know you kind of touched upon it with Cortez Massa, but I think it's extremely important, especially for my forested areas of Arizona.
And, we have a white paper coming out any week now on how those discounts are calculated in different ways, different states with different perils can think about it. But it's a very straightforward process. We're seeing insurance companies offer these discounts, of course, in Alabama, but also in other states that don't have benchmarks the way we do. So as long as you've got a well-functioning market. One of the things you can run into is if your state has been suppressing insurance rates for the last 3 decades, and we won't name any names, but everyone's already getting the mitigation discount, whether they mitigate it or not. So it's really important to have a dynamic and functioning insurance market, and then you've got the room to have discounts that are meaningful for people. But it's not an insurance company's job to lose money. I think we all know that, and there's been a lot of that money losing going on. So yes, we need to have good incentives that are properly calculated. There's an easy way to do that.
Excellent. I yield back.
Thank you. Ranking Member Smith.
I defer to Senator Reed.
Well, thank you very much, Madam Chair, Madam Ranking Member. Ms. Shea, I think one of the two of the main obstacles to affordable housing are local zoning rules and et cetera. That's an issue that states have to deal with, and I hope they do. The other difficulty is just assembling the financing for it. And most projects that I go to, there's 15 or 16 different sources of funding. Affordable Housing Trust Fund money, tax credits, local money from HUD, et cetera. And it takes the developer literally more time to assemble the money than it does to build the house. That's why back in 2008, I pushed through the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, which takes money from the Fannie and Freddie, so it's not a public on the public, and puts it into housing. And I've also submitted recently a much larger bill that would have more money coming from taxes on private equity. But that, I think, would go to one of the problems we have, which is instead of looking for 10 different sources, you can count on a major source of funding and then some ancillary funding. Your comments?
Well, Senator, you're absolutely right. If you talk to particularly affordable housing developers, they'll say they need 7, 8, 9 different sources of funds, and then they get on a phone call to discuss the project. And you have advisors, lawyers representing each source of fund. It starts to add up. So it's really a major problem. The Affordable Housing Trust Fund, I think it's important. It was created in 2008. My understanding, it has helped finance about 7,500, maybe 8,000 units, affordable rental homes since that time. So it hasn't really lived up to its full potential. So, but when we have such a housing supply shortage, let's get support from anywhere we can. I know there's something called the Federal Financing Bank Risk Sharing Program, which you've been heavily involved in, and that seems like a very good program, and that has had much more success, it seems. About 219 affordable rental homes, either financed or refinanced through that program. So my general view is, yes, you're absolutely right that the capital stack complexity is, we got to fix that, and we need to get funding from wherever we can to build more affordable homes, both for sale and for rent.
No, I think that's exactly right. I mean, we talk about the affordable housing crisis. Our best solution would be to provide sufficient resources from 1 or 2 places, not 17 places, which defeats the purpose. And until we do that, frankly, we're going to stumble along. It's going to, as I said, take more time to assemble the money than it is to build the home. We can't tolerate that any longer. Ms. Tingerthal, Senator Loomis and I are working on legislation included in the Road to Housing to raise loan limits and make it easier for FHA to do so through regulation rather than legislation. We're also trying to stimulate the use of accessory dwelling units, which I think is, and make them eligible for Title I financing, which I think is going to be a way in which we can also increase housing supply efficiently. Your comments, please.
Thank you, Senator Reed, for that question. I think accessory dwelling units have been demonstrated, particularly in communities in California, where it's been widely adopted, to be a way to solve a number of issues, including better use of land. So being able to use a single piece of land, already developed, already someone living on it, to create a second unit literally doubles the number of units you have on that piece of property. And it's interesting, the AARP has done a lot of study on ADUs as a tool that older households can use, where they can either live in the main house and generate a little additional income by renting out the ADU, or they may choose to build an ADU that's 100% handicapped accessible and rent out the main house while not having to move from their neighborhood, but being able to be in a more suitable physical place. So I think the focus on ADUs is a small but really important thing that communities should look at. I worked with the city of Rochester, Minnesota, and they had identified literally thousands of parcels within the city of Rochester that could accommodate an ADU, and they have an aging population with a lot of senior homeowners and are looking actively at using that strategy to build the dramatic amount of housing they need because of the expansion of the Mayo Clinic.
Well, also demographics suggest there'll be more older people as we go forward. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Ranking Member Smith.
Thank you very much. So great. This is a great conversation. I'm really grateful to all of you for being here, and I want to just follow up on some of the questions from my colleagues. Ms. Tingerthal, you can see that there's a lot of interest in the opportunities around modular home construction and what that means. And so I'm going to just ask you a couple of questions. I think there still exists a little bit of a stigma or bias that somehow modular construction is just not as good. It's not as aesthetically pleasing. Could you just address that and tell us a little bit about what you've seen to get at that kind of quality design part of the question?
Thank you, Senator Smith. One thing I would say is that we've now been building manufactured housing according to the HUD code that has been revised a couple of times to take care of issues that initially existed. But now it is some of the sturdiest and most affordable housing that we have in our housing stock. Similarly, with modular, one thing most people don't know is that every modular building must be built to the same housing code as any other building.
Right, right.
So it is exactly the same level of safety and durability and energy efficiency as any other structure.
And my experience from visiting the units that have been built in Minneapolis and visiting Rise Modular is also that the aesthetic value of the home, it looks good. It looks like a place that anybody would want to live, and I think that that's just really important for people to get in their brains as they think about the opportunity here. You were talking in your testimony about how the I think you said we've gone from like 2% of construction to 7% of construction. Those numbers. What is it going to take to truly get to scale? What are like two things that we really needs to change to get it so that it is a much larger even percentage of the construction market?
Thank you, Senator. The convincers, the people that need to be convinced, I believe, are the housing developers and the general contractors of this country. And I've said in my testimony that I think one of the allies that we need to bring to the table is the National Association of Home Builders, and how we work with them to help their members understand better what modular construction takes, and that it is not taking away jobs. It is simply organizing work differently.
Right.
And in a time when we are losing skilled tradespeople, being able to leverage those skilled tradespeople by more strongly designed and standardized processes, I think is one of the most important things we need to accomplish.
And in a field where there's a real shortage of construction trades, I mean, I know our experience in Minnesota has been that it was relatively easier to recruit and train construction folks in this factory environment, which is it's a great place to work, just basically put. Dr. Powell, I'm really interested in the interplay between the fortified program and lower insurance rates. Housing insurance costs are going up. Even in Minnesota, you would think, what, Minnesota? But we have real issues with flooding and fire that has caused our home insurance rates to go up really significantly. So could you talk a bit more about how the fortified program in Alabama worked with the insurance companies? Did you put a requirement, or how did you work with your state regulators and the insurance regulators to get lower insurance premiums?
So in the case of Alabama, that we have benchmark discounts for fortified homes that are different based on where the house is located and which level of the fortified standard it's built to. And they're all actuarially justified. There's some risk of it not, because it's not a one-size-fits-all. Different companies have different types of houses. So if a company can demonstrate that that discount doesn't actuarially work for them, they can get a deferment for the discount that does allow them to make a profit. We're not trying to put anyone out of business.
Of course not.
But in most cases, the benchmark discounts are kind of Goldilocks. They're just right. And some companies even offer higher discounts to be more competitive. We also see them offering very similar discounts in neighboring states. So especially with the hail loss problem that you have in Minnesota, there's real benefits returns to the fortified roof system, and I think you would see some very adequate discounts to get people's attention when it comes to implementing it there.
So you established, and I should say, Minnesota's drawn inspiration from the work that you all have done in Alabama by establishing this Strengthen Minnesota Homes program based on the experience that you've had. But so what you've done is you've established sort of benchmarks for insurance premium rates, and then the private insurers kind of gravitate to those benchmarks as a way of passing on the benefit of these fortified homes.
Right. Now, my understanding, I'm not in the political business, but that was the heaviest lift in terms of getting that done in Alabama. We were in a crisis situation, but we had a really great trust and rapport between our regulators and our insurance industry. And there's been examples in other states of these discounts being way too aggressive, and it doesn't do well for the insurance market when an insurer can't make money. But done correctly and with good market conditions, you can have a benchmark, or you can have a requirement that they file an actuarially consistent discount, and you should get about the same thing.
Thank you. I will yield back. Chair Britt, I just want to thank Mr. Shea for being with us today. You have been you all have been such incredible help to me and Senator Rounds and others as we've worked on the Rural Housing Reform Bill and other things. So just really appreciate the chance to have you here today.
Thank you, Senator.
And quickly, as we wrap up, I have just a few closing questions. Mr. Shea, you mentioned HUD's Family Self-Sufficiency Program in your remarks. I greatly appreciate that. That's something that I've been working with Senator Reed on, knowing that is one of the HUD programs that actually seeks to move individuals off government assistance. I'd love if you would speak to the initiative for a minute or so and the importance of just helping families reach financial independence so they're not reliant on government programs, but actually able to stand on their own and have success.
Sure. Thank you, Senator. The FSS program, under current rental assistance, the amount of rent you pay is proportional to the income you make. And that just could discourage people from getting better jobs, making more income. And the FSS program is designed to prevent that, to realign the incentives. It creates a case management to help the assisted household learn how to become more financially independent. It establishes escrow accounts, so where the additional income can be or rent due can be put into these escrow accounts and saved over time, interest-bearing. And it has been subject to a couple of studies, and the studies show strong engagement with case management, savings through ESCO accounts. So it seems to be working, and but unfortunately, the take-up in the program is not as high as it probably should be. Not enough PHAs offer the program. So your bill, Senator, it would create an opt-out for 5,000, create a pilot program. 5,000 families would be eligible to participate, and they would have to opt out. So I commend you for your efforts on the subject. We want folks to move out of assistance and into financial independence. That should be the goal for those who can do that.
Absolutely, and I appreciate Senator Reid and his collaboration on trying to move all of this forward, so thank you. Mrs. Tingerthal, did I say that right? Wanted to talk, you mentioned the Shea requirement and kind of that kind of outdated approach there. Are there other things that you think we need to address to make sure that we are unlocking the potential of off-site construction? I mean, when we look to really encourage production and scaling up opportunity for people, what else do you think that we really need to hone in on and tackle?
Thank you, Chair Britt. As Senator Smith mentioned, one of the enduring problems of modular acceptance is this somehow perception that the quality isn't as good. And there is a provision in Section 303 of the Road to Housing Act that calls on HUD to do a study on the quality and durability of modular construction and to produce a report. And, as simple as that sounds, I do think that's an important step. And again, teaming up with the home building industry to really look at those results and really find ways in which we can show people the buildings that have been built, show them the real evidence that the buildings are of high quality, that they meet the same standards. The Modular Building Institute cited lack of knowledge of stakeholders about modular construction as the number one reason that there hasn't been more adoption. It's simple, but it's not.
Yes, go ahead.
Chair Britt, I just wanted to put a point on this, something I think would be interesting to have a whole other conversation on. One of the things that's so interesting to me is how productivity improvements in housing have not matched productivity improvements in almost every other economic sector. And one of the maybe kind of magic things about modular housing is that they are achieving productivity improvements to sort of get the ball rolling. And I just think it's a quite interesting topic, something that we might want to talk more about. I know Mr. Shea and others have thought about this as well. If we're able to improve productivity, then that is going to help costs significantly, and we just haven't been able to really get at that yet.
Absolutely. Certainly look forward to exploring that. And it even goes to, Dr. Powell, what you were saying earlier, when someone is working to repair a home, then they're not building a new home, and the cost of that is significant as well. Well, I want to thank all of you for being here today. This will conclude our hearing. This has been incredibly helpful and insightful. I thought we had great questions, for all three of you as we work to continue to address this issue head on. And in particular, Dr. Powell and Ms. Tingerthal, thank you all for traveling here. Look, we know that it is the people out in America, the boots on the ground that are seeing and dealing with this every single day, that are that first line of defense that we need to hear from in order to address these things properly. So appreciate all of you being here today, and certainly appreciate your willingness to travel here. Certainly look forward to working with Ranking Member Smith to hopefully advance many of the housing proposals that will come out of this subcommittee hearing, and look forward to to doing what is needed to ensure that hardworking Americans have a chance at their American dream. For senators that choose to submit questions for the record, those questions are due 1 week from today on Tuesday, October 28th. And to our witnesses, you will have 45 days from that date to submit your responses to any question for the record. Thank you again, and this committee hearing is adjourned.
Thank you.